Hey, what's going on? Jake here with Uncommon EDC. Today I thought we'd take a look at my Schatt & Morgan number 69 Barlow in blue jigged bone. Afterwards, I thought it might be fun to compare it to some of my other single-bladed Barlows from other American-made brands, because for those that don't know, Schatt & Morgan, among another number of other brands, is owned by Cutlery, and they're made in Winchester, Ohio on the same machines that made the OG Queen and Schatt & Morgan knives, so a lot of heritage there. It's also my first Schatt & Morgan knife, or even Cutlery knife, so really want to see how they hold up against other American-made brands in a similar price point, as well as even some of the lower cost offerings. And so I picked this one up over at traditionalpocketknives.com on the recent drop for $200. So definitely a more premium offering. In fact, the most expensive knife that we're going to take a look at today. But really, I think worth it in the end. I was very impressed with the overall quality. Wanted to show it in this open position first. So you can see we have a spear point style blade instead of your traditional clip point. Although that's not exclusively clip points on Barlows. In fact, every single blade Barlow we're going to take a look at today has a different blade shape. So really love a spear point, especially on slip joints for whatever reason. So very happy with that choice, but just kind of wanted to show it open before we got too far in the video, because I know everyone likes to see the knives open a little bit earlier in the video. So let's get it closed. And we'll start with looking at this knife before we compare it to some of the others. So starting with the covers, very well done. The jigging pattern on here is excellent. Feels very random. I'm pretty sure these are hand done. I know they're handmade, hand assembled, hand pinned, hand sharpened. So a lot of hand finishing on these, although they do use some machining as well, but a lot of hand finishing on these. So even if it's not handmade, it's random enough that it looks hand finished. And so I do like the jigging pattern quite a bit. Also, the dye is very, very well done. Deep, dark, rich blue here. You can see it lightens up a little bit near the corners, up near that bolster, which I love on both the show and the pile side, and especially along the edges here. You can see that beautiful shade of blue also shines really nicely in the sunlight. In darker, low light environments, almost looks black, and so very, very well done covers. I like them quite a bit. Now we have brass pins and brass liners. Taking a look at those liners in the spring, you can see no gapping whatsoever. Also no stepping, completely flush in all three positions. As far as the fit and finish goes, this is nearly flawless. If there was one thing I'm going to nitpick, and for me this is a non-issue, I know for some people it is, and so I'm going to point it out. If there was one thing to nitpick, it's going to be the pin. So our bottom and our outer pin completely flush with the covers on both the show and pile side once again. Our interior and upper pin near that bolster are a little bit set deeply into the covers, and so there's a little bit of a drop down from the hole down to those pins, and so that's definitely preferable to pins that are sticking out where they might get caught on things or knock loose and loosen up over time, even cause damage to your covers. And so like I said, non-issue for me. You don't feel it because they're set lower than the covers themselves. They're not causing any damage to the covers. There's no cracking or fracturing of any sort, so I'm not too worried about that. If we look at our blade centering, right down the center, just like you'd like, and our bolster. Although I prefer a plain bolster, nice polished bolster, this one is very well executed. It is stamped with that S and M, and it's very clear, concise, bold, and probably the best done of any of the examples we're going to look at, which you'll see most of them have something on the bolster. So this one is very, very well done. It's a small thing, but just kind of a nice finishing overall. In terms of the action on this, the walk and talk, the pull, probably my favorite of any knife. It's excellent on here. So on traditionalpocketknives.com, he listed it as a 9 out of 10, which I've never seen on his site before. You see 7s, 8s, sometimes even lower, 5s, 6, but never seen 9s. But this one was listed at a 9, and I have to agree. It's almost to the point where it's nearly a nail breaker. There's been some times where I had to check to see if it broke my nail. It hadn't, but it's definitely a heavy pull, and I like that. It feels more stout, it feels more secure, it feels more premium to me, but also very smooth. So sometimes with those super heavy pulls, it's heavy because it's gritty and tight, too tight. That's not the case here. It feels very smooth. It's just heavy, but it is also pinchable, so you don't have to worry about your nail. You do have a little bit of effort. I'll usually pinch it to the half stop, or nail nick to the half stop and then pull it the rest of the way. Super snappy into all three positions as well. One of the nice things about that ultra strong spring though is that it's ultra secure for a slip joint. You don't have to worry about this one going anywhere. It requires quite a decent amount of pressure on that blade in order to get it to close to the half stop, and it is very secure in the half stop as well. No worries about that closing on my finger. It snaps in there and it stays there. It's not a mushy or soft half stop and then pretty much a mousetrap into the closed position. So really heavy, nice snap there, and very consistent all the way across. So feels great. For those that do prefer a little bit of a lighter pull, this may be on the heavy side, so that may be the one knock against it. But overall, I think this one is excellent. I love the action on it. You'll also see we have stamped bolsters, which we know Case recently moved to the etched bolsters. So love seeing that it's still stamped S&M. And Winchester, Ohio on the show side, made in USA there on the pile side. Spear point style blade with the 1095 high carbon steel. The blade's about 2.9 inches, but with that tang about 2.45 cutting edge, and a 3.5 inch handle here in the closed position. And so one thing I like about this one too, you can see it has a little bit of a beefier blade stock. And so I didn't actually measure it out, but it's definitely the thickest blade stock of any of the examples we're going to see. It does taper off down towards that spear point tip, so you have a nice usable pokey tip. But I do like that thickness. So we have a nice flat grind on here. Great edge on it out of the box as well. These are hand sharpened, so that may not be 100% consistent out of the box. You may see a little bit of variation there depending on who's sharpening it. But this one came with a great edge, so no complaints from me, and really, really well done. Love the spear point. Again, I think I already mentioned that earlier, but I love a spear point on a slip joint, and I just love the action overall on this one. Also comes with a lifetime warranty for your lifetime. Obviously, it doesn't extend to if you pass this knife down to family, but does come with a limited lifetime warranty and is made here in America. So to me, I think this definitely feels like it's worth the price point. I don't know that I'd pay much more for it. So just like GEC, these sell out very quickly. I think I checked out in under a minute and they were already gone by the time I went back to the page. And so they sell out very quickly. I don't know what the secondary is like for them. I've never bought one on the secondary, although I definitely considered it for that yellow jigged bone with the red shield, but never bought one on the secondary. So I don't know if there are more, but same thing with GEC. I try not to pay over the drop price, and I would probably follow that guideline here as well. But did mention wanting to show it next to some other American-made single-bladed Barlows, and so we're going to do that, starting with Bear & Son. This one's unique because I chose the best example in my collection for each of these. Schatt & Morgan didn't get that benefit because I only have one, but for all of these other brands I have multiple, and so I chose the best example. If I were choosing from the average, this is probably the only one that would drop out of the conversation. And even this one, it's kind of questionable if it belongs in the same conversation as the other three, but I think at the price point, I paid $29 for it. I kind of had to include it because it is pretty good for $29. So this is a one-armed razor Barlow, so obviously still the Barlow pattern, but has that nick cut out of the tip so you can open it with one hand. And it does feel a little bit cheaper. Obviously the fit and finish is not quite there. Our bone's a little bit chewed up here. We have a minor gap. This one has a lot smoother action than I'm typically used to from Bear & Son. That's one of my biggest knocks with them, is they typically have a very gritty action and almost come dirty from the factory, and I always have to clean them up. This one was a better example where it's a lot smoother. There's some minor fit and finish issues, but again, at $29, it's like 18% of the cost of the Schatt & Morgan here, so definitely belongs in the conversation still. I think the covers also on this one are maybe not as impressive as some of the other ones because it has that nose art with the shark mouth, but they do have some excellent examples, and I have some excellent examples of cool bone covers from them that are a little bit more intricate and impressive, so they definitely can accomplish that. We also see a little bit of cutting corners here with our bolster here. It's etched instead of stamped, and so that definitely cheapens the look overall. Same thing on the tang, we're etched instead of stamped. The pins and the liners are stainless steel. Every other example we're going to look at is brass pins, brass liners, and that may come down to preference, but I do think in every example we're going to see the brass pins and brass liners improve the overall look and make them look more premium, and so definitely missing that here. But again, $29 knife, wanted to include it in the conversation. This is still made in America. I think there were a little bit more. I think I got this one on sale, but still only paid $29 for it. So that's the price that I'm going with. From there, we'll move to the next obvious choice, which is of course case. And this is about triple the price of the other one. I think these are around $90 for this. This is the stag bone with the jig stag. And these might be the best looking covers in my entire collection. So that's also very impressive at the price point. I don't know that I would say they're the number one, but if someone tried to argue that they were in my collection, I wouldn't argue back. These are very, very good looking, and the fit and finish on this is excellent. And that's actually been the case with every one of my case Barlows. And so there may be fit and finish issues with some of their other models, but with their Barlows, I have a few different examples and all of them are impeccable, no issues whatsoever. The only thing where this one falls short, we have the polished bolster, which I again do prefer over the stamp or etch. And so that's nice. It does have a shield, which takes a little bit away from the covers for me. So I would have preferred no shield, but the only place this one falls a little bit shorter from the next example on the Schatt and Morgan is the action. It does have a bit of a gritty feel in that closed position, and as we're getting close to the open position, and so it's not quite as smooth. It's a nice pull on it, probably about a 5 or so. So it is a nice-ish pull. It's not super heavy, but it's consistent and decent. But it does feel a little bit more gritty and just a little bit less premium feeling when you're opening it than both the next example and the Schatt and Morgan. But look-wise, this may be, like I said, best looking covers, maybe even the best looking knife in my collection. This is absolutely stunning to me. And so love that one, and $90 versus $200 there. We do have back to that clip point style blade. Now the most obvious comparison I think is gonna be to GEC, their 15 pattern. This is a Tom's Choice tractor green saw cut bone. Absolutely beautiful. I love how slim this one is. So this one obviously has a thinner blade stock, thinner spring. I like the thinness of it. The cover are very, very well done. I think the jigging is maybe a little bit more well done than the saw cut here because this is very consistent and even. I prefer the random, almost messy look. And so that might be a little bit more well done, but I do prefer saw cut over jigged. So I do prefer the look of this one just a hair. I think die wise, they're equal. This one has a long pull, a lot more pinchable because of that blade shape, and also a lot lighter of a pull. This is probably only a 4.5. One of the lightest besides like the super small knives from GEC, one of the lightest pulls on any of my GEC. So I would prefer that to be heavier, but something about this one, it's just like glass smooth. There's no resistance whatsoever. So it feels incredibly smooth. Even though it's a lighter pull than I would prefer, it just feels really good. So I think this is probably the second best action of any of the ones that we're gonna take a look at. Now, one thing I did want to just kind of draw your eyes to is the stamp here. So we have some fluting on here, which is nice. None of the others have a fluted bolster. I do like that. I think that looks good, but the stamp doesn't look quite as crisp and clear as it does on the Schatt and Morgan. And you may be thinking because this one's a lot older, a little bit more scratched up, maybe even a little bit dirtier in the stamp, but I think even than the newer ones, the Schatt and Morgan just looks a little bit crisper to my eye. And that's something I can only really say just by kind of opinion and looking at them, but to me it just looks a little bit crisper and clear. Nothing wrong with this one at all, but I do think that's something that the Cooper Cutlery Schatt and Morgan did very, very well. And so it's kind of a toss-up between which one's my favorite in terms of action between the Schatt and Morgan and the GEC. They're very, very comparable, even though one's a very light pull and one's a very heavy pull. They're just both very nice. They get into their positions very nice. They're very snappy, great acoustics on them, and just feel very premium in hand. And so I do like this. Now, the GEC is more similarly priced to the Schatt and Morgan. I don't remember what the drop price is on these, but I got this one on the secondary. I think I want to say for $175, so about $25 less than the Schatt and Morgan, but definitely belong in the same conversation in my eyes. Obviously, I only have a sample size of one with that Schatt and Morgan, so gonna have to pick up another one and see if that remains consistent, but I've been very, very impressed. You can see this one has our stamped bolster, stamped tang as well on both sides, just like our Schatt and Morgan, so definitely more in that class. The only other thing really to talk about is the packaging. GC has a leg up there. I prefer the tubes all day over the boxes. The Schatt and Morgan box feels pretty much identical to a Baron Sun box if you have those, and so there's a lot of room for the labels. I don't know if they do different labels for every single model, but I know a lot of my exclusive Baron Suns that I've gotten, especially from Red Hill Cutlery, have some pretty cool labels. So those I think are a slight step up from the case boxes, which are a little bit plain. They're classic, nothing wrong with them. All of them come with wax paper. So I think it goes GEC and then Schatt and Morgan Baron Sun packaging are basically on the same level, with case being a little bit more generic. Even though it has that classic look, just feels a little bit more generic to me, so they're probably on the bottom. But I think with the three that you see on the table, I'm excluding the Baron Sun. I didn't want to show it because the price point puts it in the conversation, but it's not really on the same level as these three. But with the three on the table, I could choose something about each knife that I like better than the other two. There's something that each knife does a little bit better, so they absolutely all belong in the same conversation. So super impressed with this for being my first Schatt & Morgan. Would love to hear your thoughts on it though down in the comments below. As usual, if you enjoyed the video, consider liking, commenting, subscribing, joining the channel as a member. No links in the description because I don't think they're available, except for maybe this one. If this one's still available, I'll link it. I know both the Schatt & Morgan and the GC are obviously sold out. The Baron Sun, I think I bought it on closeout pricing, and so that one's also sold out. This is the only one that may still be in stock. But thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a great one. Take care.